All right, the NBA season, so close. So many intriguing storylines to go over. And so today we'll go through a few of them, looking at the overvalued and undervalued teams in the league. So, who's overrated, who's underrated? Let's start with the negative. Who's overrated in the NBA this year? Coming in at number 5, it is the Milwaukee Bucks. Their win total is at 50.5. That is one more win than last year. Now, you can make some pretty compelling arguments that Milwaukee's actually going to get a little bit better going into this season. With Giannis being healthy, with Middleton and Lillard being healthy, a full season with Doc Rivers as the coach, just providing a little bit more stability and a bit more of an identity than they had before. I do think that there are some real opportunities for that team to be successful. However, for them to get over 50 wins this year, basically everything has to go right. Giannis has to fully, healthily play like 75 games. Ditto probably for Middleton and for Lillard. They're going to need to figure everything out defensively and probably need some guys to step up because also the East is just very good. And so I have my worries that the Milwaukee Bucks, the window has kind of closed on this group. And I just feel like enough teams have passed them by that 50.5 feels insurmountable. And so that's why I have them as an overvalued team this year. What about the Utah Jazz? They're at number 4. They won 31 games last year. Their total is now 29.5. But it always follows the same pattern where you have a decent start to the year. Everyone's like, oh, wow, look at this. Like, if the playoffs started today, the Utah Jazz would be in the play-in. Isn't that neat? And then we get to around January and they start to get their brains beaten and they trade off any pieces that anyone would be interested in. And then it all kind of goes downhill. Now, maybe there's a little bit less appetite for that now that they've signed Lauri Markkanen to a contract extension. But I do have still some concerns about Utah, and especially since this draft year is going to be, I think, significantly better than the last one, there is going to be more enthusiasm to lose, let's say. And so I do think that Utah probably goes under that one this year. At 3, it's the LA Clippers. And this feels a little forced almost at 39.5, but Kawhi is injury prone. I think that's pretty safe to say at this point. Dude has some trouble staying healthy. Paul George is gone. And so it is now up to Kawhi and James Harden to lead this team to the promised land, which means that it is up to James Harden to lead this team if anything happens to Kawhi. So on the nights where Kawhi is load managed, on the nights where Kawhi is a little bit banged up, it is the James Harden show. And we have seen over the last little while, that does not equal winning basketball. And so that is where I think a lot of the concerns are around the LA Clippers. I think this could be a really ugly season for Los Angeles. At 2, it's Miami at 44.5. They had some injury problems last year. And so I think you can kind of explain that away. And then again, they had some injury problems and they still finished at 46 wins. But this is still a very unremarkable roster to me. And we are getting, like, there's some uncertainty around Jimmy Butler. They made a big move to bring in Rozier, and then he couldn't stay healthy. And I think he is a much better 3 than he is a 2. And if there's going to be any injury problems with Butler or anything like that, I think that's forcing too much Terry Rozier into your lineup. And so that's going to be, I think, a big problem for this team and a big concern for this group. And so I don't. Again, I think for 44.5, you are expecting best case scenario from basically everyone. And we could get to a point with a undrafted, or not undrafted, but with a expiring contract here for Jimmy Butler, that he gets moved at some point. And then the wheels fall off out there. So I think there are more scenarios where this goes bad out in Miami than there are ones that are good. And at number 1, I already know someone from the YouTube comments who's going to be a little bit upset about this. It is the Philadelphia 76ers at 52.5. Everyone's getting adjusted. I think there is going to be an adjustment period with Maxey probably wanting a little bit more responsibility after just having an unbelievable year last year. Joel Embiid fully healthy for a year with Maxey as the guy. They didn't have that as much last year. But they did have it for a stretch. Like that's not the biggest part of this. But also now integrating Paul George into this offense, who I do think can be a little bit chill, but also does kind of need to get his. And so I think you are looking at a team that is going to try to get adjusted while also being very wary of protecting Paul George and some of the injury issues he has had. Protecting Joel Embiid, who missed all of last year, or not all of last year, but missed a very large chunk of last year with an injury, and then played in the Olympics a month ago, and is now back, and we're just assuming going to play 82 games. And so I just think there's so many different things that they are working around. They're 100% going to be the playoff team you wouldn't want to face when we get down to April, but 53 wins, I don't see it. I think there's going to be a lot of puzzle pieces going in and out that is going to make that team a little bit difficult to put together. And then now the undervalued teams. Who's underrated this year? At 5, it's the Orlando Magic. At 47.5, with the younger players getting another year of experience, KCP bringing that kind of winning pedigree to the group and all of that. I think that the Olympic experience for a few of these guys as well is going to help. They had a very clear and obvious hole, and it was very hard for them to score. Defensively, they are unbelievable. I do think that KCP, while not the most dynamic scorer, is someone who can, fill up the buckets, so to speak. That's what the kids are saying, trust me. But he can go out there, get you some buckets, while also playing well defensively. And so of all the guys they could have gone out and got, obviously I think Paul George is probably the best. And so that didn't work. But in terms of how they fit into what they are doing and still addressing a need that they had, I think that he is one that helps them out in a very big way. At 4, it is the Houston Rockets. With all of the young kids that they have, and now another year with Van Vliet and with Brooks, and it all kind of meshing together, and Ime having another full year there to kind of do his thing as a coach, I feel like this is a team that takes a very big step this year. And so I think they are a little bit undervalued at 43.5. This one I'm taking a chance on. The Detroit Pistons at 25.5 points. I know one of the mantras of this show since it started back in 2021 has been feed off of the bad teams. So many times, honestly, a lot of the overvalued in any preseason market is just not assuming that this bad team is actually going to be that bad. And for a bit, we have been able to profit off of the ills of the Detroit Pistons. But that ends now, to a certain extent. I think Cade has a chance to be a breakout guy this year. I think that injuries and just the team's irrelevance have kind of made us forget how good this kid was in college and some of the great things that he can do. I think that they overpaid for some, but I do think that they have brought in some actual NBA talent, which I have heard helps. And so I think that maybe not a significant step. I don't think they're going to be playing meaningful games or anything like that. I just think that there is going to be a step forward for this group. And yes, I just said that there is going to be incentive to tank for teams this year. I think Detroit wants to be out of that now. I think that they kind of want to see what these young kids have and take those steps. And I think there's going to be at least a little bit there this year. And so to get to 26, 27 wins doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility for Detroit. At 2, the Dallas Mavericks. They won 50 games last year. Their total is at 49.5. I think this is a better team. I think Clay fits exactly what they need perfectly. And I think what they need fits what Clay can do now perfectly. He doesn't need to go out and be super dynamic offensive dynamo. They kind of just needed him to go out there, spot up, and hit some threes at times. Because that was something that was greatly lacking on this team last year. I have concerns about them defensively, but I think a full year with Washington and with Gafford on this team, and another year of Lively and all of those guys kind of developing and meshing together, added that with Klay Thompson in the corner, jacking and knocking down threes, I think that this is going to be a very, very dangerous team. And so Toxic asking, what do you think Clay can provide at this point in his career? I think we kind of get him into this is now his Ray Allen era, right? With the Miami Heat, where you used to be a top 1 or 2, sometimes 3 on very, very good teams. Now, if you could kind of just be our 4th or 5th best player, but our best shooter, and someone that teams at least have to worry about, so that not 5 people can collapse on Luka when he starts to drive. Just be that drive and kick corner 3 option. That's all he needs to be, and I think that's kind of all he can be. I still think he is a very good shooter. That doesn't just go away. And so I think with less responsibility on this team, that's going to be a role that I think fits him perfectly. There's absolutely a world where he's just cooked, and I'm wrong on this. But I do think that he is a guy that can transition into this new role in his career really well. And I think it was difficult for him in Golden State because it's all there, right? Like you see like the banners up there. You see the spot where they're saving to retire your jersey someday. And so it's tough to just be like, no. I wasn't the guy, that was Steph. But I was one of the most important pieces on all of those championship teams. And this whole arena is built off of a lot of the hard work that I was able to do. And so it is tough to be in that same spot and transition into that new role. And so I think a fresh start in Dallas will allow him mentally to kind of get over some of those hurdles and be able to build up on that in a real important way. And so I do think he can provide quite a bit. At number one, the Sacramento Kings at 44.5. I think DeMar makes this a more complete lineup. It makes scoring just so much easier. Not that they had a ton of trouble scoring offensively, but in the half court at times it could kind of bog down a little bit. And he is one of the best half court scoring players in the NBA. And I think one of the other things it lets them do is instead of it is now Sabonis and the bench, and it is now Fox and the bench, you can now have two of those three out there at any time. And it kind of lengthens the lineup and it makes you more dangerous for all 48 minutes of a basketball game. And so I think Sacramento, they had the big like the berm thingy a couple of years ago, and that was great. We all loved it. They took a bit of a step back last year. I think this is another step forward, probably even beyond what we saw from them a couple of years ago. I think Sacramento has a chance to really, really be a problem out west. Conrad asking, would you have retired Vince's numbers if you were in charge of the Raptors? Yes, I would. There's a video up on this now on youtube.com, again, /@CouchPotatoDiary. But yes, I would. I understand he quit on the team. And as a kid at the time, that was incredibly frustrating and very disappointing and core memory and all of those sorts of things. But when you look at what he did with the Raptors, and not even like, even if you just want to block out the they would have folded if it wasn't for him thing, just from a play on the court standpoint, multiple-time All-Star, led this team to within one shot of the Eastern Conference Finals, was consistently one of the best players in the league for this team for an extended period of time. Even just that, I think you have to at least give consideration to retiring his jersey. But then when you combine it to the importance of bringing all those eyeballs in and making basketball cool in a hockey mad country during hockey season, all of those things combined, I think it's a no-brainer. And yes, it would have worked out perfectly timing-wise if you could have retired Kyle Lowry's jersey first and then Vince Carter's. But I don't think, with Vince going into the Hall of Fame this year, I don't think you can let the New Jersey Nets be the only ones who celebrate Vince Carter in that way, given how important he was to your franchise. And yes, set them back years and years and years with how he handled his exit from Toronto. A, we've become a little bit more accustomed to that now in the NBA. But B, I just think that the timing of it all with him going into the Hall of Fame really does kind of win out in this spot. And so, yeah, make it a situation where Vince is the first one up there, and then the second Lowry retires, his jersey is up there. He signs a one-day contract with the Raptors, and the jersey goes up in the rafters. And if you want a way to honor Kyle Lowry first, have Lowry be the first statue that the Raptors build outside of, I almost called it the Air Canada Centre, whatever, it's a Scotiabank thing. Have the Lowry statue be the first one out there, and then you can put a Vince one wherever you want after. But that is, I think, how you can kind of make there be balance in the force again, is to have Lowry get the jersey retired second, but the statue first.